My name is Leonie. I'm the research director of the research training program, and I've spent the last couple of years thinking about how to do research that matters. I'm extremely grateful to be able to share with you today what I've learned over that time and why I think that the research training program could be the first step for you to have the highest impact possible in your career. Before we are jumping into things, though, I would like you to walk with me through a small thought experiment. So imagine this. You're a doctor at your local hospital. You've been working there for years. You've been serving your local community. You're good at what you do, and you have saved several lives over the course of your career. One day, though, and all of a sudden, a big earthquake hits your town. Luckily, the hospital is still standing, and over the course of the next couple of hours, people are flooding into your waiting room with concussions, broken ribs, and all kinds of injuries. It's absolute chaos, and everybody needs your help. You know, you've only so many staff members in the hospital today, only so much room to treat patients, and only so much medicine to give out. And all of a sudden, you are in charge of deciding who gets treated for what, at what time, and knowing that you cannot help everybody. How on earth are you going to make these decisions? Now imagine that your hospital is not just serving your local community, but the whole world. That it was not just an earthquake that hit your town, but three, in addition to several floodings, a pandemic, a civil war. And while all of that is happening, people are also not receiving adequate education, kids are drinking contaminated water, and people are dying from preventable diseases. Imagine that in that town, you're not a doctor, but a decision maker in charge of distributing billions and billions of funding. Should that money be spent on bed nets to protect people, water filters to prevent people from dying from diarrhea, or a training program that helps people move out of extreme poverty? Should you vaccinate wild dogs for rabies, inform people about corrupt politicians, or run radio campaigns to tell people about vaccinating their kids? Should you fund existing projects or start new ones? These decisions can feel absolutely overwhelming and are literally a matter of life and death. Decision makers are faced with them every day. So where should they start? Over the next 20 minutes, I would like to tell you all about how this program is designed to equip you to walk up to that decision maker and tell them what to do next. So this is our overview for today. The first item that I want to cover is why you should become a prioritization researcher and why I think that's such an exciting opportunity. I will also then cover how the program actually works. We will delve deeper into the content of the program, the learning outcomes that we are envisioning, and then what a typical day and week of the program actually looks like, so you get a bit of a better idea there. We will then also talk about who we think should apply for the program, and it might not be as obvious as you think, and then jump into a question and answer session. So please, as Rika was saying, submit all the questions that are coming up during the conversation in the chat, and we will kind of compile them and address them by the end of this. So jumping into things. Why should you become a prioritization researcher? Why prioritization? I will briefly talk about how prioritization research has made our work at CE what it is, how independent prioritization research has had an impact outside of CE, and what decisions this type of research can influence specifically. So taking a step back, I would like to talk about how research has translated into action within charity entrepreneurship itself. As Rika was mentioning in the beginning, over the course of the last 5 years, we've incubated 30 charities that are currently, and as I'm speaking, reaching millions of people and animals. Every single one of those charities had an intervention report written by a prioritization researcher behind them. In addition to those 30 reports, standing behind those 30 charities, researchers have also written hundreds of other reports that were not deemed worthwhile pursuing. Figuring out the difference between a great intervention and one that doesn't work makes the difference between problems being solved, actively worked on, and problems continuing to persist. Charity entrepreneurship has also recently started supporting grant makers in making better grant-making decisions. So that's what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the slide. So every grant that is given out by the Mental Health, by the Meta, by the SEED, or the Global Health and Development Funding Circle is based on these individuals' best guesses on how their resources will go the furthest. Prioritization researchers have a huge leverage point here to support this process. But research is obviously not just happening within charity entrepreneurship, and exciting things are happening in the space of independent research as well. So you don't have to be part of an established organization for your work to have an impact. So a couple of examples to maybe pull out here. Some of you might have seen this a year ago. Somebody was publishing some material about the importance of snake bites and some of the bottlenecks in the space of snake bites that were causing people to still be bitten and dying from snake bites, although in theory we know how to create antivenoms. That work then went on. It actually created a space in which decision makers were redirecting funding, were pursuing alternative interventions that they wouldn't have considered otherwise. And that work, simply by publishing a report, actually created this cascading effect of more and more people thinking about the issue and projects coming about that would otherwise not have happened. Similarly, one thing to maybe mention here as well is Akhil's work on violence against women and girls. As far as I remember, he actually won the second prize of Open Philanthropy's Cause Innovation Prize Challenge here, talking about violence against women and girls. And this is a fantastic example of how independent research can be used to identify and find the best ways to address complex problems here. And not only has that led to now him kind of looking in that space and pursuing a funding circle, but also for charity entrepreneurship to start an organization in that space, which is really exciting and hopefully happening over the next couple of months. Maybe to reflect on my own work here, as I was starting my position with Woodley Impact, I was in a very similar position to maybe that doctor from our metaphor with which I have started this conversation, where there's just so much opportunity out there, and we're being given this task of optimizing resources available to a grant maker, to a foundation, but it's an absolutely overwhelming exercise to figure out how that works and which concrete projects to actually support. So we were working specifically in the field of foundational learning and international education. And one thing that is very common in that space is to fund a lot of hardware. So we are talking about schools providing more teachers, providing more learning materials such as books. And once we actually started delving into the evidence and starting doing some of that prioritization research, we realized fairly quickly that this is actually not translating into the learning outcomes and improvements of people's lives that we would actually like to see. So we actually ended up taking a step back here and reorganized our priorities towards a totally different line of inquiry. And that turned out to be way more impactful. So I was really grateful to be able to be part of that process. And then maybe a last example to mention here is a piece of work that actually came out today or maybe 2 days ago. The researchers work on mental health funding opportunities, which talk about identifying opportunities in an expanding cause area such as mental health. It's always great to have more people thinking about these spaces, and their work is obviously informing other mental health funders here as well. Yeah, to maybe summarize the overarching point here, why should you become a prioritization researcher? When we are looking at how to achieve impact, the first thing that we need to do is to prioritize and make a plan of how to address the problem we are facing. We then need to go and implement that plan. We then need to know if that plan is actually working. We need to evaluate if we're going in the right direction. And then if we know that we are going in the right direction, we need to scale that intervention as much as possible. During that process, as you can see on this slide, we have to make decisions, and a prioritization researcher skill set allows us to do that. So from the initial theoretical prioritization to then figuring out if the implementation of that prioritization is actually working, an evaluation skill set is definitely something that helps organizations themselves reorient them towards having the most impact, but also informs funders and grant makers to which projects they should support, which are hugely influential decisions and can only be made on the basis of high quality research like that. So we hope that our program equips fellows with the capacity to prioritize the right interventions and evaluate implemented projects for their impact and help these decision makers make those decisions. But to provide a bit more granularity on what this actually means. So how does the program work? We will start with a bit of an overview over what the content of the program is. So the first week will basically start with a basic training. We will have an overview of the most important research skills, and I will talk a bit more of what we mean by that in a second. So we will start with having an overview, and I promise, like at first, like this feels overwhelming, but 5 weeks into the program, things all of a sudden clear up, and participants have reported last time that things become easier and easier over time. So we will start with that initial training element, but fairly quickly jump into actually applying skills as we are learning them. So it's a lot of learning by doing, and we will spend the first couple of weeks with iterative prioritization. So that could mean picking an initial intervention and then investigating that for a specific time period, such as an hour. If it still looks good after an hour, kind of running it through a process where we are looking at it for a day. If it still looks good after that, we are going to look at it for a week, continuing this process until we, by the end of that funnel, have really identified these really exciting opportunities that we want to evaluate more closely, which also leads us to the second half of the first half of the program, in which we will prioritize writing and publishing those deep dives on the most promising interventions. So basically, the first half of the program will kind of separate out into the training elements, a prioritization, and very quick and iterative depth approach, and then this very deep dive on the most promising interventions. After all of that has happened, we will take a tiny break, which is not really a break, but it's definitely a shift of focus in a sense. So we will be thinking about careers in during the midst of our program, and very specifically taking a step back, looking at what we've learned, looking at the portfolio that we've grown in the last couple of weeks, and then also engage with a lot of people that are already working in some of the careers that we might want to consider for ourselves. So this is an opportunity to really ask some questions to some experts and reflect on what your next steps are going to be, as well as doing things like polishing up your CV and your LinkedIn and getting some advice from other participants on how to kind of showcase what you've learned best. And then there will also be some time to actually apply to concrete positions. After that has happened, the second half of the program is focusing on evaluating charities. So really jumping into looking at programs that are already implementing interventions and evaluating their effectiveness. This is working with real world clients that want to know how well their program is working overall, and what types of improvements they can make, or how they can inform their funders best about the impact that their program seems to be having, which is then, again, informing funders, but also informing the organizations themselves, which is very exciting because, of course, it's fantastic to learn about interventions in theory and kind of do that all in the first half of the program. But I think really engaging with people that are trying to make that work and implement it in the real world is very, very exciting, and I'm always looking forward to that. Yeah, so that leads me to our planned learning outcomes. So we are looking at the skill set for a prioritization researcher as this bundle of kind of unique skill pieces that are coming together to help us make those decisions. So the first thing that's very near and dear to my heart are theories of change. I love theories of change. I feel they are absolutely underused, and I think, yeah, Rika is chuckling here a bit. It's a bit ridiculous at this point how much I like theories of change, but they're absolutely fantastic, and I'm always really excited to kind of work with people on the program to develop those for the theoretical programs in the first half of the overall training program, and then to help some of the existing charities kind of put those together for programs that they are already running. So hopefully by the end of the program, participants are walking out of here having really mastered the concept and feel confident in applying it to whatever their next step is going to be. The next really important element that we are looking at are evidence reviews. So evidence is absolutely crucial for all kinds of decision making. We need to understand if what we are planning to do actually has a chance of success and a chance of working. And if it has a chance of success and a chance of working, how well that would actually be, how big the effect size would be of an intervention, and how, how something happens, but also how big the effect was going to be. So we will look at evidence reviews and how to do them with different timeframes available. We will look at evidence reviews and what makes good evidence in different cause areas. And we will very practically apply this by doing this for a bunch of different projects. This allows us then to also use that evidence to kind of pick out the numbers that you need and apply them in a cost effectiveness analysis. So CEAs are very widely used in certain contexts, but getting them right is really hard. They tend to kind of grow into these overall huge spreadsheets that turn out incredibly complicated with hundreds and hundreds of rows and formulas that are going on. And we are really trying to, equip participants to feel comfortable facing that spreadsheet and creating such analyses themselves, but also critically engage with material that is already out there. So CEAs are definitely a big part of kind of the learning outcomes that we're looking for. And then maybe the fourth one in this list are weighted factor models. And I think this is, again, a very exciting aspect. We will be using weighted factor models for a variety of different things, mostly for overall decision making, but they will be used to decide in the career week, maybe what career you might want to focus on or what application you might want to hand in. They will also be used to decide which of the interventions we want to look into in more depth. So we are really trying to kind of abstract that tool and apply it to a bunch of different opportunities and things. And hopefully that allows people to walk out of there and kind of apply that to some of the new challenges that they will be facing after the program. So those are kind of the core 4 things that we would like to kind of really drive home during the program. But then there are some other kind of research skills that we would like to touch on, but maybe not get into as deeply. So things to name here would be maybe some forecasting content, talking about moral weights and some value frameworks and how to basically think about the overall question of what do we actually mean when we say we want to achieve good or we want to have an impact. And then we will also cover some monitoring and evaluation content, which is maybe a good segue into talking about what we won't be focusing on during the program. And maybe that's a good reflection for you as you're thinking about maybe applying for this program as well. It's, I think, important to point out that we are mostly focusing on intervention prioritization work in the program and not necessarily cause prioritization work. So what I mean by that is basically we are trying to provide people with a tool set that allows them to pick whatever problem they deem most important and then apply this framework to that problem and then prioritize what they need to do or what actions they should take next from that process. But that's not to say that we are necessarily going to tell you what that most important problem is. So it would be very kind of applied and not a lot of philosophical discussion, if that makes sense. The second point to maybe mention here is that we will mostly be working with secondary data instead of primary one. So the research training program is not intended to generate unique or initial data from any kind of program. Although we will touch a bit on monitoring and evaluation, we will mostly be using data sources and papers and evaluations that have already been conducted and kind of have that inform our own work, but not creating those pieces of evidence ourselves. Yeah. So what does all of that mean in terms of what a typical week during the program actually looks like? So as I was mentioning earlier, the program kind of starts with this initial training week. So we will start with more content, more reading, and more exercises. And then over time, we're transitioning very quickly over into more applied research. So we are doing that, one, because we believe it's the best way to actually learn this type of work, to just get your hands dirty and work with projects directly. But we also believe that this is the most honest way to actually simulate the day-to-day work of a researcher. Yeah, so what this means is that we have a heavy emphasis on learning by doing and giving and receiving of feedback. And it's not meant for you to work on a project to a point where it's created perfection and then you're handing it in. So it's a very kind of tight feedback looped approach here. Yeah, and then as we are kind of walking into the program, the later weeks will definitely prioritize longer research projects that can either be done individually, in pairs, or in groups over time. And sprinkled throughout all of that, we have further sessions and workshops that are kind of meant to supplement some of the research skills and developments that we are looking at over the course of these days. So what this all breaks down to, a normal day on the program could, for example, look like this. You get up, you start working, and you check the overview document for your assigned tasks of the day, and then you review some Slack messages. Because the program tends to be very international, there are so many fantastic researchers all around the globe. We normally have somebody in every time zone, so that means as some people are sleeping, some other people will be working on their projects. So that means sometimes when you're getting up, there's a lot of stuff that might have happened over the course of that time, and then you might want to kind of check some of those new updates. So that's definitely something that your day could start with. You might then kind of log on to our collaborative work platform, which is GatherTown. It's basically a mini virtual office with everybody having tiny avatars that you can like walk around with. Everybody has their desk, their meeting rooms. It's a very fun place to be. So you could log onto there and then kind of meet up with some of your colleagues and fellow participants to then kind of engage in independent or collaborative project work on GatherTown. And once you've done that for a couple of hours, you might want to take a lunch break, or you might want to attend some of the scheduled group meetings or sessions of the day, or continue working on a different project. And then you might want to close your day by checking in with your supervisor to discuss some of the challenges you might have been running in over the course of the day. And I promise you, there are many. This is not a straightforward process, and everybody that tells you to is maybe not sharing the full picture. So it's absolutely okay if you're getting stuck on things. This is absolutely normal and to be expected. And we have a lot of advisors on call to kind of help to work through those things. So that's what you can do by the end of the day, kind of visit some office hours, discuss some challenges, and ask some questions by the end of the day. And that's what an example of a day on the program can look like. Having said that, because we are walking through these different sections of the program, and because every day is somewhat different, and maybe you want to get different things out of different days, there's a lot of kind of you can customize this in a way that serves your learning best. Yeah, which also brings me to the benefits of the program and how the program might serve you best. To maybe start with an overview here. One thing that we want to point out is that we don't expect you to volunteer for a training program like this, even though we consider it a training program. Charity entrepreneurship is providing stipends to cover your living costs during and potentially even after the program. And if stipends or financial compensation is a consideration for you that prevents you from applying, then please reach out to us, especially if you have dependents or childcare costs, to just ensure that financial constraints don't hinder your participation. And we will also share our resource handbook with you, our handbook on how to do research that matters. And you can access our complete researcher's toolkit, including our templates, our methodologies, and all of our resource accesses. So that's definitely something that will be provided to all participants. One other benefit to point out here is, and this is something that I've touched on earlier, is that the program is meant to grow your research portfolio. So if you're applying to a bunch of different positions, you will have those reports published that kind of showcase what you can do and what kind of research you're capable of. So you will walk out with a portfolio of published intervention reports and charity evaluations that are shared by us, but also by other organizations that make them decision relevant. And beyond the fact that those reports hopefully influence decisions and have an impact, they will hopefully also help you demonstrate what you've learned to potential employers. Everybody who goes successfully through the program will receive a certification in intervention comparison and charity impact evaluation. So this is an official certificate that Charity Entrepreneurship gives out to the fellows of the research training program, which again is a possibility, an opportunity for you to showcase to potential employees or to potential projects that you want to be a part of, that you've been through the program, that you know what you are doing in that regard. Yeah, maybe another benefit to point out here is the community aspect. And this is something that I am really learning to appreciate right now. In particular, I think going through the first research training program was a really intense experience. And once we kind of came to the last week, it was kind of sad to know that for the next couple of weeks, not everybody was going to be online as much. People are going to move on into new and exciting projects, which is really fantastic to see. But I've really also been missing the community that people on the program have built, and it's been a really fun time to be a part of that. But in addition to connections to your fellow researchers, there's obviously also kind of community and connections that are grown with the CE team itself and then the wider CE community. As we've mentioned several times, there are 30 charities at this point. They are all doing a variety of different things. All of them, again, work with a number of different people. It's a big community at this point, and it's a really fun community to be a part of. And with participation in the program here, that's also joining that community. We will also make sure that your work is directly shared with several of CE's partner organizations, and hopefully that increases your visibility for potential future job applications as well. Which leads me to my last benefit of the program here, the job search and application assistance. So as I was mentioning earlier, we have that career week kind of carved, or that time carved out to think about careers and next steps. And we will kind of actively engage with you to figure out what your next steps are going to be here. To provide some job search and application assistance to help you land a role in an impact-focused organization or research field, which also means accessing concrete opportunities within the CE ecosystem and the wider research community. Yeah, if this sounds exciting to you, then this is a big question of who should actually apply for the program. Who do we think might be a good fit, or for whom might this research program be a good fit at the point of their career that they are at right now? And maybe to put this into these three overarching categories, we have people that are motivated researchers that want to build their research portfolio and improve effectiveness-minded organizations, prioritization and resource allocation skills, which is a very kind of broad category of people, and you can very much self-select into that group. We are also looking for early career individuals who want to build their research toolkit and gain practical experience. But we are also looking for existing researchers in the broader global health and well-being communities, but also from the animal space and what other community you are a part of. So if you feel like any of the things that we've touched on today might be useful to you in your current job, and your employer, for example, would be excited about you to skill up in those skills, we are also very excited for you to join us for the program and kind of take some of the tools that you've learned to an existing organization. Or if you've been working in academia for a long time and want to switch to something that is a bit more applied, then this could also be a fantastic opportunity. So whatever age range, whatever kind of background, whatever varied motivation you might have, there's actually kind of a broad spectrum of who we might consider to be fantastic applicants for the program. To illustrate this a bit more, these are the participants of the last program. As I was saying, they're kind of spread across the globe. We had people in a variety of different time zones, which made scheduling group calls quite an exercise, but also was fantastic in regards to getting a number of varied perspectives on things. And I think we had a situation at some point where somebody was writing a report on air quality in particular and indoor air quality, and then actually looked up the air quality in the town that they were currently living in and realized that they were exposing themselves to a level that was quite unhealthy. And they ended up going out and getting an air filter for their office that they were spending a lot of time in. So yeah, it was really great to have kind of such a broadly spread community there. In terms of backgrounds, maybe this is also a good example of, what kind of different walks of life people come from and kind of make it into the program. We had a person working as a pediatrician, people just out of their undergraduate, physical therapists, some development economists, community builders, people working for the governments, and data scientists. So people that came in with quite a different age range, with quite a different kind of background and employment history. And surprisingly, none of the things of what you did before the program actually predicted any success in the program itself. So if you're currently wondering if this is the right fit for you for that reason, if you are thinking that I might have a background that's not applicable here, then I would encourage you to reconsider and actually apply for the program, because that's the best way to figure out if this could be a good next step for you. Yeah, these are some testimonials from people who were in the program last time. And again, to iterate here, I really loved working with the participants, and it was a fantastic period of time. Getting to know so much about everybody and everybody's unique perspectives, but also for us as organizers to be able to learn from all the different people in terms of the backgrounds that they came in with, but also it's not like we know everything. I think we have valuable lessons that we have learned that we can share, but we are also very grateful to be able to learn from the fellows on the program, and that has been a really fun experience. And I think maybe one additional thing to point out here is that I was really appreciating the kindness of the community as well, and how supportive it was. So everybody was just extremely lovely and helped each other kind of improve what they wanted to improve over time. And to a point where, in addition to the advisors maybe providing some support, participants were also kindly providing that for each other. And I think that was really cool for us to see. Yeah, if you're still with us and if this still sounds exciting to you, maybe there are some application tips that I can share at this point. The overall application process starts with just a 30-minute application form. And if you are wanting to prepare yourself for this, one thing that I can recommend is to maybe skim through some of CE's published reports. They are all available on our website, and this is the type of research that has been decision relevant in the past for charity entrepreneurship, and is a good representation of some of the reports that we might want to produce over the course of the program. So if you're reading through those reports and you get excited and this is something that you would like to learn how to do, then that's definitely a good sign. Similarly, we've just published some of the reports that came out of the last iteration of the research training program. So the participants have put those up onto the Effective Altruism Forum. If you're looking up the tag Research Training Program 2023, then you can find all of those reports listed. It's a very interesting and very in-depth and detailed read about a number of interventions that might not be super obvious, familiar, or have been discussed before. So I can definitely recommend that. And again, that should give you a really good idea of what the final outputs from the program could look like for your research portfolio. Overall, we also recommend to maybe tailor your CV and reflect a bit. So what we mean by that is once you, now that you've heard about the program and what this is actually about, it might be good to draw on some of your unusual achievements, your some display of altruism and creativity and your previous work, how maybe you've used data before to improve decisions, or how you've worked on an independent project. or how you've changed your mind and pursued or displayed grit. So it might be good to just help us to see how some of the projects you've been doing so far might inform what you might want to do in the future. So really just taking a step back and think about what kind of things you want to particularly showcase there. Yeah, and overall, maybe a good piece of advice here is just imagine what it would feel like to be responsible for a report that actually translates into a new charity or moves thousands of dollars in funding. And hopefully that's enough motivation. But if you're still hesitant, we encourage you to just apply, because it's the best way to figure out if you are a good fit for the program. The vetting and application process is designed to help you figure out if this is a good fit and help us figure out if this is a good fit. And overall, we hope it's also a bit of fun, because we are trying to emulate a lot of the projects in the application process to what the projects on the overall program are going to be. So that gives you a bit of a sneak peek there as well. Yeah, so I think my main message there is to apply for the program and not think about it too much. It just takes 30 minutes and there's nothing you can lose from that. Fantastic. So I think this will move me to our question and answer session. And thank you so much, Rika, for kind of compiling those as they are coming in. Maybe I will take the first one and then just work my way down the list. So the first question that is here is, can I do the program while also doing another job? So this is a question, this is a great question, and this is a question that has been coming up a couple of times. We have to say that the program is full-time and actually quite intense in that time. We are scheduling for 35 hours a week, and we are unfortunately at this point not able to accommodate a program on a part-time basis. Having said all of this, we are hoping to make some of the materials that we're using on the program available for self-study in the future, so that people who want to skill up can use those materials to whatever way that serves them. We still believe that if you have the opportunity to take these 3 months to be on the program with us, that's obviously always going to be a more intense learning experience, and hopefully will help you to progress a lot faster than if you were to kind of conduct this as a self-study. So unfortunately, at this point, part-time, doing the program part-time is not possible. But if you're not able to step out of whatever you were doing for 3 months, then, or if you're not able to, if you don't have the time, then hopefully we will make the materials available in the near future, and then hopefully that will help you at least gain that in that sense. Fantastic. So the next question here is, what happens after the program? And again, this is an important question, and I want to stress that this program is different than some of the other CE programs, as there's no guarantee of a job opportunity after the program. So in that sense, it's a lot more of a training program than the other programs that CE runs might want to be, which might be better characterized as incubation programs. So with the incubation program, you're walking into the program planning to start a charity and making that your full-time role after the program. This is not the case for the research training program in the sense of having guaranteed opportunities after the program. And because this is only the second time of that we are running the program, we also have only some early data from the last program what participants went on doing afterwards. We can say, though, that we've seen some very promising early results from the program, and we know that this is a skill set that improves your impact in a variety of different roles. Like with that kind of core skill set, you should be able to have an impact in a variety of different things. And obviously, we are taking a lot of time during the program to help you think through what exactly those next steps are going to be. Yeah. Fantastic. The next question is asking about the reason for why the program is actually existing. That's a great question. I was pointing out earlier how this type of research can influence different decisions. So that can be funding decisions, those can be organizations starting new organizations. And we know that the problems that exist in the world are just very large. And we know that the resources that are available are very large, but we are currently lacking in opportunities to actually deploy those over time. So the reasoning for the program existing is to help people create those products out there in the world and actually create that level of impact. Yeah, having said that, we think that this is a skill set that is not necessarily just applicable to this space. So even if you're thinking of working on creating these types of product for a specific period of time, because there might be slightly less opportunities there than if you were to define what you're looking for more broadly, you might want to take those and apply those in a slightly different way as well. So what that could look like is, for example, to join an organization that is doing direct implementation of a project and then work with them as their monitoring and evaluation lead and actually create those products over time, and then help them create and update their theory of change, which is way more applied than maybe the kind of specific prioritization researcher mindset. But it's definitely still informing this quite broadly. And we believe that there's a large gap for these type of roles, even if maybe the subset of pure prioritization skills opportunities is slightly smaller. Yeah, to maybe run through some very specific and quick programmatic questions. When does the program begin? Yeah, if it begins before June, when will the next one take place, if at all? So we are planning to run the program twice a year from here on out. So this means that the next program will start on the 15th of April. And the last date on which you will have received notification if you're accepted to the program is the 15th of March. And then it will run for 3 full months. How many people will the next program accept? We have a bit of flexibility there compared to some of the other programs because we're working across so many different time zones and because this is a fully remote program. So last time we had 16 participants in the program, some of which were maybe some special cases in the sense that they were kind of using yeah, maybe they were kind of slightly outside of the profile of what other people were there for. But we are looking to, again, accept between 16 and 18 participants. If it turns out that the application round is really strong, we could even see that number going up by 2 or 3 more participants than that. Fantastic. Yeah, so the training program will be offered again later this year, and the timeline that we are looking at is for probably fall of 2024. What exactly the starting date of that is has not been confirmed. I think we can yeah, there will be an kind of a re-evaluation point after the next program, and it depends a bit on how many changes have to be made and how much time we would need to make those changes. But yeah, I think fall of 2024 is kind of the timeline that we're looking at. How much is the stipend? Yeah, so we are looking at our regular stipend that is the same for all the incubation programs, which to my knowledge at this point is up to $2,000 US per month. Speaker, please correct me if I'm wrong here. But again, if you are having dependents, if this is for one reason or the other, not something that would allow you to work on the program for 3 months, then please get in contact, and there are more conversations that can be had about that. But that's the amount that we are currently offering on a general basis. Yeah, and also this, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the whole program, sorry, the next question is if the program is fully remotely, how we are handling different time zones, and what that would mean for working alone, or yeah, in a weird, if you were in a weird time zone, if that would mean working mostly alone. This is a great question. And as I was kind of showing on the slide earlier, we do have participants from all around the place. Whenever possible, we are trying to see if we can group people into smaller subgroups within the program. So that could mean that you will work more closely with people that are living closer to you over the course of the program, and you will also kind of work together with an advisor there. So we are hoping to create a bit of a sub-community within the larger group there. As I was saying earlier, 16 to 20 participants is a fairly large group, and definitely larger than the programs that CE is currently running. So kind of figuring out those subsections is important. Overall, and this is something that we would discuss with you in later stages of the application process, if you are in a time zone that is very out of the way in the sense of, or if it turns out that the team that is organizing the program is fairly far away from you, this is a conversation that we would have in the application process and figure out how to best accommodate that and what your wishes in that situation would be. We did have situations where in this program, sometimes people would only interact with their advisors, for example, in their later afternoon hours, because that would be when they would wake up, or for people to engage with their advisors early in the morning, but then those would sign off and you would work more with your sub-community over time. So it definitely comes with some challenges, but yeah, that's definitely something that we're trying to figure out how to accommodate over time, and we will have further discussions with participants for whom this would be a particular challenge over the course of the application process. Yeah, so maybe a subsection of this question is how often there are meetings and check-ins at fixed times. We will, in most cases, if not all cases, never run a fixed meeting that needs to be attended by all participants. So that could mean that sometimes you might not in a group interact with everybody else, but for example, we are running 2 all hands on deck meetings on the day that all hands on deck meetings are happening, one for the earlier time zone and then one for the later time zone. And those would be kind of fixed in time over the course of the program. But you could still, for example, interact with participants in different time zones through like social donor chats that are being scheduled, or kind of working on projects together asynchronously and then engaging in the time that you have an overlap. So we won't ask you to get up in the middle of the night. The earliest working hour that we would ever ask you to attend, and we are really trying to avoid that. We didn't have to do that the last time of the program, and we had somebody from Australia and North America, and we didn't have to do that. The earliest would be something that happens at 8 a.m. and the latest that we would ever ask you to attend a meeting would be at 7 until 7:30, but not later than that in the evening, and we would let you know way in advance. So even though the organizers might be a bit more flexible with their time, we have a very rigid structure for when we would expect participants to work and how we would schedule for your days there. Fantastic. Great. So why is this program not a PhD? Great question. Short answer, PhDs take 5 years. This program takes 3 months. And we think we get to be in a position where we are taking every single thing out that we don't deem absolutely necessary. And you don't get to do that with a PhD. Yeah, if somebody wants to make it into a PhD, we're not going to say no to that, but charity entrepreneurship very much believes into boot camp style programs and interventions. Another one, will the program be fun and entertaining? I believe so. I think so. And I think the participants of the last program thought so. But I think it does depend a bit on what you perceive to be fun and entertaining. If you really enjoy thinking about these questions that we've talked about today, if you love kind of thinking your way through complex problems, if you love having those discussions on a high meta level about the philosophy of what we think is actually meant by doing good, then this is very fun from a content side. I think even if you don't enjoy any of those questions as much, just engaging with other participants. There's a lot of social activities that we are organizing as well, that I think overall have made the program fun last time, at least from my impression. So we are trying to make space for that whenever possible. So we definitely try to make it as fun as possible. It's intense, it's engaging, but I think that can be a good thing, and most participants seem to have really enjoyed that last time. Yeah. So when we're talking about participants' reports being published, is that referring to peer-reviewed channels or grey literature publishing? Great question. So we are not currently publishing through any established journal, although that is something that we are continuing to discuss. Right now, we believe that the format of a journal is not necessarily serving the purpose of what we would like the reports to look like. So what I mean by that, for example, is in an ideal case, we would create an open source system in which somebody puts a piece of research out there, and then there are collaborators that can kind of improve that piece of work over time. And to a certain extent, that happens with peer reviews in journals as well, but this is taking it to a bit more of an extreme case where even after a couple of years after a piece of work has been published, somebody could still come in, take that, and hopefully improve on whatever has been happening so far. So as an open source community, we are kind of building this literature over time and improving what that is, and hopefully making that as best as it can be. So right now we're talking about those reports being published on the CE website, for example, on specific forums, and kind of sent to a number of different entities, and in that sense be officially out there, but not at this point through an established journal. Fantastic. What have been the career outcomes of participants from the first round of the program? Can you please give us a sense of the demand for these research roles in the nonprofit sectors and researchers specialized in prioritization research? Great question again. So the career outcomes of the participants from the first round of the program are a bit early to tell. So we've only closed the program just before the end of the year, so it's not even been 4 weeks. Having said that, we have seen some really initial and promising results. That is some of the participants moving on to other programs within CE that they didn't feel ready before. For example, hopefully starting a charity in the next couple of months. We have seen several people join some of the existing CE charities as research advisors and interns for the next couple of months. And we have seen 2 or 3 people that have already received job offers within the wider effective altruism movement, but not necessarily within the CE network. So I will be able to give you more concrete numbers on this in the next couple of months. But yeah, as I've been saying, it's very early days right now, but I think the results that we have seen are really promising. I think a subsection of question of this is also what a demand for these research roles in the nonprofit sector would actually be. As I was pointing out earlier, it depends a bit on how broadly or how narrowly you think about these different aspects. So if we're looking at just a prioritization researcher skill set, most of that work might be happening in foundations, or it might be happening in organizations like charity entrepreneurships or governments that are thinking about how to pick interventions to pursue or to fund. Having said that, that's already a pretty large opportunity within and without the EA movement. So for example, just governments having a bunch of subsections where forms of cost-effective analyses, for example, come in very handy. And then we believe that all kinds of direct delivery research and joining some charity, for example, and within kind of the narrow community or the wider community could be a fantastic way to kind of apply that skill set, while also learning additional skill sets in that job that are on top of what that would be. But I think having a number of people in your organization that helps your organization stay on track and actually remain impact focused and know how to evaluate that and know how to properly make a plan for that to happen is an invaluable tool. So I think there is a broad case here from just an impact perspective. Yeah, fantastic. The next question here is on the profiles of candidates, and I will quickly jump through this because I know we are coming to the end of the hour. Yeah, the age demographics within the program. I can maybe give you an upper and a lower bound. So we have yeah, I think the oldest person was probably in the beginning of their 40s, and the youngest person, I think, had just turned 20. So we have about a 20-year age range, which is still makes the average age of the participant on a younger side. And I think this mainly comes down to the flexibility that participants might have at an earlier stage of their career. For example, people who are just finishing their undergrads might have a bit more flexibility than somebody who has other responsibility and is a bit later stage. That's not to say that we encourage that demographic or we select for that demographic, but I think that's what's been showing up in our application pool as well there. Yeah. And in addition to that, there are no degree requirements, there's a variety of different people who have been on the program and have been very successful last time. Yeah, and basically this program is meant to take you from very little baseline knowledge to becoming an experienced and confident prioritization researcher. It does help if you are coming in with a baseline on specific things. So for example, having engaged with spreadsheets before is incredibly helpful. It's not impossible to come into the program with zero background on these, but it definitely slows your learning down quite a lot. So that's definitely something we encourage. Having some basic familiarity with evidence and what makes good evidence. So maybe having heard or having engaged with any forms of randomized control trials before can be helpful in that sense. And maybe having kind of looked through or engaged with cost-effective analyses as well. Like that's definitely helpful. So if somebody kind of applies to the program, we also have a responsibility to make sure that that learning experience is going to be a good one on the program, which is why the application process is trying to test for those baseline abilities to make sure that we are providing a realistic challenge over those 3 months. Those presumed baseline skills, maybe to expand on that a bit, is definitely having a basic understanding of statistics is helpful. But maybe that baseline is a lot lower than one would initially think that would be. So all kinds of career changers and all kinds of backgrounds are encouraged to apply. If this sounds interesting to you, and if this is something that you would like to learn more about, that's probably the most predictive aspect of knowing or understanding if this would be a good fit for you. And the next step would be to figure out by applying to the program. Who should not apply for the program? Nobody. Like everybody should be applied. There's nobody whose application we wouldn't like to see. And we hope that over the course of the application process, we can help you figure out if this is a good step for you at this point in time.
Okay.
Sorry, Rika, I'm getting so caught up in those questions. Thanks so much.
Yes, I'm just gonna quickly butt in to say that thank you for everyone who stayed for the entire hour. We're going to extend for another 10 minutes for anyone who wants to listen in for some questions about the application process and more. So, Leonie, any last words for the people who are about to leave?
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us for this last hour. It's always so fun to be able to talk about this. Thank you so much for your interest, and I really, really hope that you're applying. takes 30 minutes, and we would love to see your submissions.
All right. So thanks, everyone. And let's continue on the Q&A. Sorry for butting in, Leonie.
No, thanks so much. I was just running through those questions. It's good questions. So apologies for not keeping time here. Yeah, maybe to answer some questions about the application process. The first one here is, could I apply for the summer program and defer to the fall round if I was accepted? The answer to that is yes. This works with most of CE's programs. So applying sooner rather than later is always a good call. Again, as the application process is moving forward, if you're ending up in one of the last rounds, this is a conversation that we would have with you if this is a good time right now, if the fall would be a better time. And that's definitely something that we have accommodated before, and something we are thinking of doing again. Does an applicant already have to have an abstract research topic in mind when completing the applications? Absolutely not. So it's always fun if people come in kind of having a specific topic that they have been engaging with before, or a specific sub-cause area that they would like to investigate. But the responsibility on us as the organizers is definitely to bring in fruitful research projects. So all the it's not to say that you obviously you don't have to do any of the projects that are suggested, but we are definitely putting a lot of effort before the program to put together a list of the best things that you could be researching at this point. So you definitely don't have to come in. You don't have to do that work before you are applying to the program, for sure. If we apply and are not accepted, how can we find how we can improve our chances for the following cohorts? So we will provide more and more information for things that we think might be worth improving over time the further along the process goes. So even with the first stage, if it turns out that maybe at this point this is not a good fit for you, we would send you a list of things that you could be doing if you wanted to improve your chances the next time you are applying, and kind of the further the application process goes, the more in depth that feedback will be in that sense. Generally, I want to say that this is still the second iteration of the research program, so we are still kind of tweaking our processes and the program, obviously, and the profile of the candidates that we think we can provide the most value to. So even if you have applied before, even if you're applying now and maybe you are not moving as far in the application process, I would still recommend applying again, even if you feel like there haven't been any significant changes in your overall ability or experience level, simply because the profile that we are headhunting for the next iteration of the program might actually look slightly different and might weigh some of your some of your abilities slightly different than the last round would. So definitely there will be some feedback on how to improve, and definitely always recommend applying again. Relatedly, if the first stage of the application feels like it will take more than 30 minutes, is that a sign of a poor fit for the program? So to let you in on a little secret, prioritization research and research is an absolutely overwhelming task, and it's an opportunity. There are opportunities at every corner to go down into the deepest rabbit holes that you can find. So it can be an absolutely overwhelming process. It's very easy to get lost in the details. And one thing that we are trying to aim to teach or do over the course of the program is to help people to keep a clear head during that process. So what this means for the application process is that we are very much emulating what that would look like on a program, and that sometimes can feel like an overwhelming task. But what we're really looking for is for people to still attack that task under time constraints and come out on the other side with a solution that makes sense to them. So if the application stages feel like they take more than 30 minutes, that's not a sign of a poor fit for the program, but it is important that you are taking 30 minutes and trying to come up with something, and that's all we are asking. And yeah, the next question here is, can one participate in both the research training program and effective giving? I mean, applying for both, and what are the chances of being accepted for both? Yeah, so you can apply for all of CE's program at the same time. That doesn't make any difference. Like, your application for one program is absolutely independent from any application for the other programs. Besides the fact that if you've been accepted to one of CE's programs and you have been going through the process, and you have been, for example, you were in the incubation program and you haven't started a charity, that would mean that and if you wanted to go into the research training program, you could maybe skip the first 2 or 3 application stages there. Similarly, if you have been on the research training program, you could skip the first 2 or 3 stages for the incubation program. Other than that, these application processes are absolutely independent, and if you're excited about more than one opportunity, that will definitely not negatively reflect on any of your applications. The chances of being accepted for both, maybe one thing to say here is that our application processes for different programs do look slightly different. We're obviously looking for different candidate profiles. The entrepreneurialness of somebody will be weighted a lot higher for somebody who's joining the incubation program than for somebody who's joining the research training program. So we are testing for different skills here, different participants' profiles. And although there are intersections, a charity entrepreneur is still different. So I would encourage you to apply for more than one if you think you might be excited for more than one. And then the application processes are hopefully going to help you figure out what might be the best fit for you right now. Overall, because the incubation program is CE's oldest program in terms of numbers of applicants, that's definitely the largest application pool. Whereas with some of the newer programs, we're looking at slightly smaller application pools there. Fantastic. I'm just going through the list here. Yeah, Rika, is there an additional question here that you think we might want to cover at this point?
Maybe one thing is how different the second launch is to the first run of the research training program. Was there something that you learned that updated the structure of the next one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there are some structural changes that we are making. I think we collected some really interesting data over the course of the program of people's perceived learning levels and perceived enjoyment levels of the program. So there were definitely aspects where sometimes things just didn't turn out the way that we initially had planned them to, because it was the first iteration of the program, and we might have been a bit overambitious about what is possible in a short amount of time and with the capacity that we had. So that's definitely kind of something that we've learned, and we've received feedback from participants, and we're really excited to implement all of that feedback and make those changes. Another aspect to maybe point out here is that we are changing slightly how we're thinking about charity evaluations. That's something that CE hasn't. We have a very clear template and guideline for how to conduct intervention reports, because we've been holding that template for over 5 years, whereas with our evaluations, that's a bit more in its earlier stages, and we were able to run a couple of different experiments here, and over time figure out what experiment kind of works best here. And again, we were really grateful to the participants who kind of went with us onto that journey and kind of provided feedback on what worked and what didn't work. So definitely a lot of changes to some of the templates, changes to the training material, changes to the written content, and then just making the program overall easier to follow and more accessible. And then standardizing and structuring some things more that we might want to structure over time, now that we've actually figured out what the best version of some of these elements looks like.
Okay, so there are actually a couple of questions throughout the list about, oh, if I'm coming from this specific country, am I eligible to apply? The thing is, in all of CE's application processes, we accept anyone from any demographic, any age, any country, any level of experience. We're not looking for specific credentials, but actually potential. So your performance in the application process for us is more telling than what's written in your CV. While it is really helpful to cater your CV for the skills that we are looking for, which Leonie has mentioned, what really matters to us is that we see your potential, that we think you really want to make a difference in the world, and we want to be able to facilitate that growth. No one comes into any of our programs ready for it. That's what the program is for. We're training you up to be able to contribute whatever skills you have on the table to the wider effective charity ecosystem. And I hope that helps anyone who has questions like this. Everyone's eligible to apply.
Yeah, great. Absolutely.
And that is it for our session. Thank you everyone for staying through even the additional 15 minutes. We are going to send additional information, the application link, even the recording of this talk in a few days. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me or even Leonie. Our emails are rika@charityentrepreneurship.com and leonie@charityentrepreneurship.com. So again, thank you everyone and have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, we can maybe to just summarize all of this and also leave a couple of last words here. Thank you everybody for spending the last hour with us, hour and 15 minutes at this point. Again, our main message is we highly encourage you to apply. If you're hesitant, the best way to figure out if this is for you is to apply. The first application stage takes only 30 minutes. I do promise you it's going to feel overwhelming, but I also promise you that if you're handing in whatever you are able to put together in 30 minutes, that's going to give us a great indication of where to take this next. And the application process is designed to figure out if this is a good fit for you. And we hope to have convinced you of two things today. One, the importance of these skill sets and the huge amount of potential for impact that a prioritization researcher can have. And yeah, the second thing is obviously to apply. And again, thank you so much for spending this time with us, and we hope that you have a lovely rest of your day.